Okay, we can talk about that as well. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I'm here from Canada. And I'm here with my American friend, Deb Frueh from Illinois, and I lectured at her event. And I have an exciting story. It was we just just published a book called Weird, the paranormal world of apports and manifestations. And the last story that I put in the book that I absolutely insisted Desta Barnaby put in the book is a story that's going to be told a little bit today by Deb Frueh, and this has to do with a seance. And if you're familiar with apports and manifestations, a lot of this happens around physical mediums. It also happens around experiencers. It happens around ghost cases and things like this, where stuff will move around in a house or stuff will just manifest out of nowhere and fall out of the ceiling. And now when I interview UFO experiencers, I always ask them, does anything ever fall out of the sky or move around? And they'll always say, oh yeah, and they start telling me stories. So Deb has an incredible story of a seance that she attended, and I wanted her to tell it as part of a podcast and a YouTube video so that people can hear the story because it's one of the more incredible physical medium stories I've ever heard. I guess the best is going to be always going to be the one that was told by a New York Times reporter, Leslie Kane, when she told the story about the hand appearing. I mean, I don't know if anything beats that, but this story you're going to hear today is pretty magnificent. So, welcome, Deb Frueh, and thank you for coming on and telling this story for me. I just am fascinated with the story.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I love this story.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. You run a conference called the Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe Conference, and tell me a little bit about when it is, and we'll sort of maybe update as we go along if we can get who you're going to have. But you've got a couple of people coming, and tell me a little bit about how it started and where you're going with it.
Well, you've been to my house, Grant. You
Yeah.
know that I live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And in order to see any of my friends, particularly my psychic friends, I have to travel a lot. And
Yeah.
so I invited them out to my house once, and they had such a good time that they said, let's do this again next year. It was the Perseid meteor shower. It was a great night. And so the next year I invited them, and the next year, and it grew and grew, and I added entertainment and then speakers. And then I moved to a bigger venue and started flying in speakers, and it just got bigger and bigger. And it's called the Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe. We started 10 years ago. This will be our 10th anniversary.
Wow.
And it's August 10th through 13th.
Mhm.
And we're planning on having the 10th anniversary party to remember. So,
Wow. Beautiful. Okay, and you have the port story that we're going to talk about goes back to late last year, and
yes.
tell me how you got into seances. Are there many in? I know your conference is the only one sort of in the Midwest, except for the Ozark conference. Your sort of metaphysical tribe thing is the only one in Illinois for sure. I mean, the only
Right.
major conference, and you're near Chicago, so you've got a sort of a major center there. But what's I never heard you talk about seances or anything like that. How did you get into that?
Well, I always was curious about physical mediumship and seances because I didn't really know what they were. You can read 100 books about marriage, but until you get married, you
Yeah,
don't really know
exactly.
what you're talking
Exactly,
about. And
exactly,
same
exactly.
thing with having a baby. You can read 100 books about babies, then you have one and it's a completely different world. So I wanted to experience one because I'd read about them and they just seem like that can't be real. That can't really be happening. People are being tricked. They're being their willingness to suspend disbelief, is too high, that sort of thing. And I'm just Midwest practical, I I wanted to see it for myself. And I got in touch with physical medium in the strangest way. Um, I'd say the best physical medium on the planet right now, or one of the best, is Kai Muge, and he is in Germany.
Yeah.
And I had connected with him and his wife, and before COVID, we were setting up for them to come out to this area
Wow.
and do a tour. And there were several places that I had that were approved for his seance. And then COVID happened and they couldn't leave Germany. But he always does a yearly conference, except for COVID, and a yearly seance in New York. And I had made friends with everybody on Kai's friends list, hoping that somebody would have a connection. And one of those friends has a friend in Chicago who's a physical medium. And
Wow.
she called me up, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, I've been chasing you for years, and here you are on my doorstep. I can't
Wow.
believe it.
Wow.
So her name is Julie Adriani, and she lives in Chicago. And yeah, she said, I work with another physical medium who's been doing it for a long time. She is, I'd say she's out of her training, but you're training for the rest of your life for this kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and she said he comes from the Pacific Northwest and he's coming around on Halloween. Do you want to come to a seance? And I'm like, of
Wow.
course I do.
Yeah.
Halloween's the best night for a seance.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So he had done a seance the night before our seance, and he had apported from his mouth this monster crystal. And so I don't know how he got it. I don't know how he even got it out of his mouth, but they told me because he had apported that the day before that there was only a very slim chance he would be able to do it again
Yeah.
on Halloween, which he did not. But the story itself was pretty amazing. I had all kinds of friends lined up to go with me, and one by one, they all dropped out.
Wow.
So I wound up going by myself, but we were going to, it was being held at a metaphysical shop in West Chicago called the Journey's Path, and I'm good friends with the owner, and some of the people there are regulars at my tribe event. So, I definitely had friends there. And when I got there that night, it was really interesting. They have this big meeting space. It has 10-foot walls. And then above that is about 3 feet of open ductwork, wiring. They put
Mhm.
all kinds of lights up there um, but it's wide open spaces. And the cool thing about it that I thought was that we were allowed to go into that room and walk around, come out, go back, come out. There was no place that was off limits. They were setting up for the seance.
Mhm.
They were putting up the 2 cabinets, which physical mediums have to be in an enclosed space to keep their energy,
Mhm.
more concentrated.
Mhm.
And they just had these gorgeous, what do I want to say, velvet tents that they were putting up. And it's
Mhm.
just PVC pipe and velvet, and it's all pre-made. And
Mhm.
they're setting those up. And I'm walking around, everybody's walking around watching everything. And we were just allowed to do whatever we wanted. And then finally, when the seance was ready to begin, we had to take off our shoes. We had to take off our jewelry and leave it in the outer room. We had to turn off our phones and leave them in the outer room. And then we all sat in a circle, and they had plastic taped up everywhere so that the littlest sliver of light could not get in there. I could not believe how dark it was.
Mhm.
I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. And I don't say that lightly because I hear people say that all the time. And I'm thinking, really?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
really, we couldn't, it was that black. So we start out and these things are all about energy, getting high energy. So they start out playing music.
Mhm.
And we're rock and roll, pop music, anything to get the group together, and we're all supposed to sing along
Mhm.
and so I think at the second song, Hey Jude, everybody knows Hey Jude.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're really belting it out, because you can't get those words wrong. And all of a sudden I'm looking across the room, and you're supposed to call out phenomena if you see it. And so I'm looking across the room, and there by someone's feet. It had to be in that general area because, again, I couldn't see. Um, I saw sparkles.
Mhm.
And I thought, "Oh, that's just my eyes playing tricks on me because it's so dark in here,"
Mhm,
making up
mhm.
all my excuses. And then those lights grew and grew and shot up the 10-foot wall and started dancing around together, splitting up, coming back together again. And the
Wow.
odd thing about it was that, I mean, I'm looking for beams from flashlights, right?
Mhm.
I'm looking for technology that knows how to do this. I couldn't see a thing,
Wow.
not a thing. And I didn't know what to say. I just had to put that, to the side and keep my focus, for the whole uh thing. And then after that, there was a little table in front of me, well, it was about 3 feet from me, and it had ping pong balls on it. And the ping pong balls were painted with glow in the dark paint.
Mhm.
And they started bobbing up and down like popcorn in a popcorn machine. And I thought I was the only one seeing it.
Mhm.
And then everybody else is calling it out because you're supposed to call it out. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, this is really happening. Other people are seeing it.
Mhm.
And then one of those ping pong balls hopped off the table and rolled over to my feet. And you're not supposed to touch
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I pulled my feet up onto my chair and I sat in the lotus position for the rest of the night. Uh, bec- I was totally terrified that I might touch something and, you know,
Yeah.
bring the whole house down somehow. So then a really strange section of this. Oh, I need to go back for a second because one of the things that these uh, mediums do is they go to incredible lengths to prove that they're not
Mhm.
uh, fooling you in any way.
Mhm.
So one of the things that they do, they take a glass of water before the seance starts. They
Mhm.
take a mouthful, they mark it on the glass where it was and then where it went down to. They hold it in their mouth for the entire trance session
Mhm.
with a piece of tape over their mouth,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
And then at the end, they take the tape off, they spit the water back, and you look to see, is it at the same place? So was there a hose in there? Did they,
Yeah.
because this next part was challenging. Um, Someone called Lady Nada started talking, and her voice sounded like I shouldn't say this, but she sounded like the French chef,
Oh yeah.
Julia
Yeah.
Child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And her voice was coming from the direction of Michael's tent, Michael Shane's tent, but it wasn't coming from the tent. It was outside of the tent to the side and sort of higher up,
Uh-huh.
like and it was so loud and it didn't sound like it was coming over a speaker. It sounded like somebody was just talking to you with a really loud voice.
Uh-huh.
And she gave each of us a number, and then because she didn't want to have to remember all our names, so she went around the room and she gave us each reading.
Uh-huh.
You could ask one question
Wow.
and she would answer your question. So, I was number 4. So, number 4, what's your question? So, I asked my question. I don't know that she answered it all that well, but it wasn't the easiest question to answer either.
So what do you
It was
ask?
about I asked if my son had a message for me, and my son has crossed over.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And her response to me was, "Do you want me to say this in front of everyone?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And she said, "Well, I'd like you to he wants you to know that this had nothing to do with you and he's happy." And I thought, "Okay, but we've already covered that ground. He passed away, almost 6 years ago. I know that that's the truth already."
Yeah.
But okay, fine. That was her reading for me.
Yeah.
I let it go and passed it on to the next person. Um, but then at the end, after she finished reading for everyone, she wanted us to imagine that we were in a forest and everything was green. And that there was a vortex that was starting to turn over our heads, and that this vortex was spinning faster and faster and faster. And we're singing Roy Orbison at that point in time, while she's making her exit. And I thought the vortex was for her to leave.
Uh-huh.
Instead, we were showered with gemstones,
Wow.
showered. And there was a big singing bowl on the floor, and they're hitting the singing bowl and it's ringing out. And, you
Oh.
could just hear it. It was like a truckload of them. It seemed like. Uh, Moving on just quickly, at the end of that part, then they turn on the lights, and the assistants to the physical mediums, they go around with the lights on and they pick up every single one of these. Some of them, Grant, were smaller than my smallest fingernail, and they were all faceted,
Wow.
in some way, shape, or form. Now, they collected all of these, they put them up in the front, they sorted them out. In the meantime, the uh, the mediums are coming out of their trances now.
Uh-huh.
And they come out, they take out the tape, they spit the water in the glass, everybody looks at it. And then they chose two people, of which I was one of them, and the
Wow.
owner of the store was another one. And we were chosen for the final apportation. And this is where the night before this very large gemstone had been um, apported during this particular part, but we had a different experience. So we had this towel, sort of embroidered, beautiful thing, and we held it right under his chin, and he just sort of breathed them out. It wasn't like, "Oh, well, he swallowed them and now he's
Uh-huh.
regurgitating them,"
Yeah.
and there was, I don't know, 100 some. So there's no way he could have ingested all of
Yeah.
those and then come out and somehow just breathe them out of his mouth. And they said to me, the assistants are talking to me while this is going on, and they're saying, um, "These are coming from under his tongue."
Uh-huh.
And this huge gemstone that he had apported the night before came from under his tongue. And I was kind of afraid to touch it because of the don't touch anything rule. Um, However, my partner, who was holding the other side of the towel, did touch one of them, and she said it was dry as a bone.
Is that right?
And they were
Wow.
all dry. There was no sputum, no nothing. There is no way this guy swallowed and regurgitated these things. There is no way. And I was standing this close. So it takes a lot to make me go, wow. That made me go, wow. So after he was finished with all of that, he goes back into the cabinet for a minute just to compose himself. Doors were open. He didn't like, "Oh,
Yeah.
now I've got to hide and do something secret." He just needed to go sit. Oh, P.S. They were zip tied to their chairs in these cabinets.
Yeah.
So there was no getting around anywhere. Um, and so finally he comes out. He They're all separated now, and the assistants have done what he likes, which is separate them and count them. And then he called us each up and he gave us, I got a bunch of them, um, for different things. Saint Germain gave me like 7 amethysts,
Wow.
and everything again faceted. And what was really, really interesting to me was that I did a lot of research after this, because now that I had seen it, it's like now that you're married, you go to a marriage counselor because you're like, wait a minute, the book and reality don't match.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so I did a lot of research after this because I was just flummoxed. And one of the things that I learned was that, well, two things. One of them is apportations come from somewhere and and apport to you. So they really exist someplace else
Mhm.
at first. And I thought to myself, some poor guy in India who spends his whole day faceting gemstones, wakes up every morning and goes, "Where's my stuff?" You know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then the other thing that I learned is that they are actually ectoplasmic copies. And if you leave them out in the light, they'll disintegrate.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I've got mine in the dark because I don't want them to disintegrate. I have to just peek at them and then put them back and
Wow.
yeah, so
Absolutely, absolutely fine. I've always wanted to do I was actually going to see Kai Muge and they were going to bring him into Florida. And I
right.
don't know what happened to that. The COVID stopped it, and then they were
COVID,
talking about
yeah.
but whether they do or not. But I was going to fly down there because I was so fascinated to, where even if it is like, something that they're doing, I mean, it's almost like worth the price of admission to see them do this. It's
Yes.
like, wow.
Yes.
So that does this person come to Illinois every year?
Well, yeah, Michael Shane comes down to work with Julie all the time.
Wow.
They do classes on Zoom together, but he does come out this way quite a bit. And they have people, honestly, Grant, we were in West Chicago in the back of a metaphysical shop, and there was a woman there who flew in from Albuquerque with her child
Wow.
just to attend this
Yeah.
seance.
Yeah.
Just amazing. I
Wow.
mean, people are once you see it, you got to see it again. It's like
Yeah.
that
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And
I
then
know.
there's all different kinds of seances. For example, Kai Muge is very big into the ectoplasm part.
Yeah.
So he can create entire people out of ectoplasm,
Yeah.
which I would definitely pay to see.
And
So
you say he comes to New York?
he
Kind.
goes to this place in New York, in upstate New York, and there's a psychologist up there named Neil Razapowski who
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
posts him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Well, I had friended Neil just because, he was a friend of Kai's years ago. And then, and, and we spoke together on the phone once. And I said, listen, Neil, COVID's here. We can't really do anything. How's about I put you on my mailing list and you put me on your mailing list, and then we can just, stay in touch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, great. And then he told, just last year, told Julie Adriani about me, and the rest is history. So,
Wow. I would love to. Like, keep me informed if there is one. I would love to go and see it because I've heard about it and I've, in the book Weird, I think we have maybe 5 or 6 physical medium stories, and then we had the one pull out. I don't know why. Didn't want his name or his stuff used, which then it sort of makes you like
interesting.
so. But anyway, we had them in, and I just to see it. It's like you. It's like you hear the stories, and then you say, well, I'd like to be in the room and all this
Right.
kind of stuff, and the precautions. I know because they have them in Florida at this metaphysical church, and they have the whole same setup where you're allowed to explore the room, and they seal it all off, and they go through great lengths because all you need
Right.
is one sort of bad story, and you're out of business. So
Right.
they go to great lengths to make sure that nothing weird is going on, and I would love to see that. I mean,
Well, I
uh,
know they'll be doing it again, so I'll keep you posted, Grant.
yeah, yeah, wow. And so your impression was good about it in terms of
My impression that was that the apportation was for sure real.
yeah,
The effects were real. I was close enough to that ping pong ball. I was close enough to Michael as he's exhaling these
yeah, yeah,
gemstones,
yeah,
that I know for a fact that it's real. Okay. What's the purpose of it? I'm still not sure.
yeah. It's a display. Well, what about the person that was coming across? Is this an actual person, or is this do
The
they have
Lady
any?
Nada,
Yeah,
is
do they
she?
have?
ha- No idea.
But
No
does
idea.
but
She's
the
a
same person
regular.
comes all the time? Yeah.
Well, she does come on a regular basis, although not every time.
Okay.
He has a pantheon of people that sort of rotate through,
Oh,
and she's one of them.
wow.
So,
Do they have anybody that's alive? Because I was going to run the DNA experiment where I wanted to do
right.
somebody who's in trance, and we were going to do Kai Muge has agreed to do it. and he brings this former parapsychologist across. And the unfortunate part was the parapsychologist never had children, because what I wanted to do was get Kai Muge, and Kai Muge had agreed to do a DNA test where we swab him while he's in trance. And we were trying to figure out how you're going to do this, but swab him while he's in
Yeah,
trance, and then you get supposedly you're going to get the DNA of the person that he's channeling, if that person is present. And unfortunately, the person didn't have kids, because I thought, if the guy had kids, we would get the DNA, and then you could take the kids. And if the DNA started to agree with the kids, because, if you do
right,
23 and me, it gives you all the relatives around the world. And if
right.
you had suddenly one of these relatives appears in this DNA list, then you got some pretty strong evidence. So Kai had agreed to do it. And I went to a couple of other physical mediums, and some of them did. And we were going to do Bashar had agreed to do it when he's in trance. So that's what one of the experiments I wanted to do, is to see if the DNA changes when they're in trance. But if this woman doesn't have any background, well, then you really can't sort of check. But that's something I would be
She
very interested.
might.
Yeah.
She might. I just don't know.
Is,
I
is there
mean,
any of
there
the
is
other
so
people that
much
you
to
know that
take in.
come across? Did they mention any other people that comes? Because like I know with is it the guy from Thompson from they were going to bring him into Florida, and he has John Lennon come across, and he has
Oh,
uh, uh, Satchmo Armstrong. He
Louis
comes across,
Armstrong. Yeah.
and that's kind of stuff that just fascinates me to. And I remember I was talking to the one guy, and I said, were you sure? And he said he was standing on my feet, or he's standing on my wife's feet or something like it. Yeah, he was there. He was right in front of me. He was standing on my feet. So that's kind of stuff I would just like, for once, like it's on your bucket list. It's like, wherever
Yes,
you got to fly, you fly down there, and you spend a couple days. So keep me informed.
will
And
do.
because the paranormal, I think you agree with me, is that whatever it is, it's telling us something, and it's a fascinating life. You wonder how people can go in their life without doing this kind of stuff, or getting this kind of stuff, that they're watching news or talking about, gossip about people that aren't in the
Yeah.
room and stuff. You wonder, like, why they can't
Well,
be
worse
interested.
yet, worse yet is, that it's bad to talk about those things, that you're a
Yeah,
kook if you talk about those things,
yeah.
You should at least have room to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe with the book, it'll raise consciousness, that people realize there's a lot of people, especially when you get the story like Leslie Kane's.
Right.
You might look at trying to bring her in or something, for her UFO stuff and her life after death stuff, because the story that she tells, I mean, this is not, when this hand appears, and she said it's appeared a number of times when she's there, and she's just sitting at this table. And she's a New York Times reporter, so she's not,
Right.
somebody off the street, and she's done series and stuff like this. And she's looking at, for example, the kids, the blindfold children, that
Mhm.
I couldn't believe why nobody would take interest in these blindfold children, kids reading books with blindfolds on. And Leslie Kane, of course, she's starting to look at this phenomena. So she's open enough, at least, to look at it, and
Good.
go to the site and see whether she can validate it or not.
Right, right. Well, she's a reporter. That's what she does.
Yeah.
So,
And I know she had the same thing when she first started. I helped her get started, but she had the reservations as well, because she was, a reporter from Pacifica radio on the West Coast, and she sort of figured, like, I'm this reporter, and now I'm stuck with these UFO people, and it's sort of like it was embarrassing. And some of her friends are saying, don't get into this and all this kind of stuff, and especially when you're a New York Times reporter, and then you get into something weird, whatever it is. I mean, your reputation is on the line, so she's got to be very careful that she does, and it's fascinating stuff. So, thank you for telling the story. Is there anything else we need to talk about that we should?
well, I had an odd apportation this morning.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Well, tell me about that. Wow. Too bad we didn't.
This is this is kind of strange and very, very nonchalant, but I woke up this morning and all of my bedding, of course, was clean and my pajamas were clean. I mean, there wasn't like it wasn't a tornado in the room or anything like that. But I woke up and I pulled the blankets back and there was a business card in my bed.
Wow.
I don't know where it came from. So I know these people, so I'm going to call them up and say, what, why are you, why are you trying to get my attention this way?
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, it'll be. Let me know what happens with that, because maybe it's because of they knew you're going to do an interview this morning. It's like it's almost like who was it that said to me it's they're almost like in some ways like children. The entertainment that they want to
Yeah,
do, it's like very juvenile and stuff like that.
yeah.
And you see this over and over again with apportations and manifestations. Have you had the things apport moving around the house and stuff like that? Have you had that kind of stuff happening as well?
That happens. That's been happening my whole life, but I never
Really?
knew it was a thing.
Wow.
I just thought I was forgetting where I put things and I can't say that I ever had like my car keys in the freezer or anything like that, but I have found things in odd places and finding a business card in my bed is like
Yeah. That
I there is no reason for me to even have that business card.
yeah.
So it's very odd.
It'll be interesting what they say. I mean, too bad
Yes.
if we update the book, we'll stick that in the book as well, because
Okay.
that's the kind of stuff I really like, and it's sort of inexplicable, and people can rationalize it away or whatever. But when it
Sure.
happens to you, it's a different thing. It's like you mentioned, like that when you get married, it's when things happen to you, it's like people tell you, and it's like, no, don't tell me. I know what happened. You're the one. I always say, like, they're the believers. They have
Right.
this belief system that they're trying to defend, and you're the
Right.
one that knows because it actually
You're the
happened to you, and
knower.
you're the actual knower. So I
Yeah.
appreciate it, and I will update you on anything I can learn that maybe can help your tribe event, because it is a big event, and it is an interesting place to sort of hang out with a bunch of people who are in. And to tell me a little bit about the people that come to your event, because you're a tarot card reader, and so you have that kind of stuff, and people who are doing it for a business. So explain who they might run into at these events.
Well, this started out as basically networking for metaphysicians
Mm.
because at that time in 2014, we were all in competition with each other,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, and so, well, you charge too much, you're not that good,
Yeah,
that sort
yeah,
of thing. And so, I decided that that was the wrong approach and that we all needed to support each other.
yeah.
And so as soon as I had had 2 of these events, I knew that that's where I should be going. And so when you come, you'll probably bump into practitioners of every level and every stripe. I always say it's for the metaphysical practitioner, the metaphysically adjacent, like yoga or Reiki, and it's for the metaphysically curious.
Mhm.
So you can come there at any level of interest, and we do have lots of readers and vendors and things like that, so that you can really meet some interesting people and get some interesting readings.
Do you still have it at that Airbnb place?
It's a B&B, and
Yeah,
yes, this year it'll be there.
yeah. That's a beautiful place. Tell me a little bit
It
about that.
is.
It's
So this B&B it's a five-star B&B
yeah.
in the middle of nowhere in a town so small, there is no traffic lights. That's how small it is. That's how small the town is. However, the B&B is
Huge.
quite well, it's huge and it's quite well appointed. It's
Mhm.
the owners call their style prairie chic. So they have, things with American Indians, or they have things with buffalo, and they're beekeepers. So you'll see bee things everywhere. Plus, they sell their honey there, which is the best honey I've ever had.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just what I love about this place the most is that if you think that you need something while you're there, they already thought of it. It's already there.
Yeah.
You didn't have to even ask. And that's the level that I like.
Yeah.
So,
And you have another place that you house people that is
several
pretty close.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually snatch up all the Airbnbs in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We have one this year that is breathtaking.
Wow.
It's in the woods. It's on 10 acres of woods, and it's brand new renovation of the most beautiful alpine A-frame. It's just gorgeous. It sleeps
Wow.
16 people. It's
Wow.
got 2 decks. It's got a creek running by. I mean, it's just phenomenal.
Wow. And lastly, how do people contact you if they want to come to the event or they want to get what you're doing? How's the best place to get hold of you?
Everything is on my website at internalwilderness.com.
Beautiful. Thank you for telling this story, and thank you for letting me use it in the book.
My
It's a
pleasure.
fascinating conclusion to the book because it was I was looking for them all, and I didn't realize that you had this event, and it was like one of the more spectacular because the odd time you'll get one thing a port or or manifest or stuff like that, but you had like this shower of all these things. I went, wow, it's like almost like it was made for the book. It was the last story we put in there, and I'm sure glad we managed to get it in there. So thank you for letting me do it, and I'll probably get you a signed book for
Oh,
your
thank you.
little catalog, and you can see the other ones. We've got Kai Muga, and we've got Leslie Kane's shirt. What's his name? Oh, his name, of course, is escaping me at the moment. But we have quite a few of them, and when you get a number of them in a book, then you start to realize, like, man, this is not. It's very hard to do. I think you'll agree with me. Like physical mediumship is not there's not that many because it takes a lot of energy and it takes
Yeah.
like 10 or 20 years to learn the skill to learn
Yes.
to do it properly. And so there aren't many of them around the world. And that's why these guys can fly in from Germany and stuff like that. And people will come from all over the United States and Canada to see them because there just aren't that many of them around. It's not like the other type of medium, what they call it, um,
Just an evidential medium.
evidential medium. Yeah, there's a lot of them around, but the physical mediums is a whole nother level. So I'm glad that you got it. And again, let me know if there's going to be one in your area there. It'll depend on my schedule, and I would definitely sooner or later I'm going to fly in somewhere. And this sounds like it's a something that's worth attending. That you're probably going to get some you're going to see something when you're there, and that's what it's all about. To once in your
Oh, yeah,
life actually see it, and rather than just reading about it.
exactly. Well, I'll
Beautiful, thanks,
definitely make sure. You're welcome.
and we'll be back in touch with the next story. Next time you get a story, let me know, and we'll get it up there, and we'll help each other out in our endeavors and in trying to bring these sort of bizarre stories that show that the world is a little bit more than the physical universe. It's so there's stuff out there to see that will teach you more about the universe than you believe right now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Grant.
Beautiful. Thanks, Deb.